Hi guys, in this video we're going to look into gradient mapping and a simple way to kind of UV map and texture our assets. You can see this image on the screen here. This is the type of thing we're looking to create. So this simple sort of low poly sort of style with these nice kind of blended textures. These textures are going to be super low res as well, which means they're going to be really optimized. They're going to run your game no problem. They're not going to cause any kind of frame rate issues for you. They're really nice and flexible. You'll be able to use kind of multiple textures across multiple models and things like that. Okay, so right, let's get into it. So I've got my sword here, and this sword has actually been UV unwrapped already with a nice sort of optimized UV map here. However, you don't need to start with UV unwrapping for this process if you don't want. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for me to kind of move things around in a second, but I'll show you some alternate ways after we've made our texture. So we're actually going to make our texture first. So I'm going to hop over to Photoshop, and this here is going to be my texture, and I'm going to show you how you can create this texture here. So I'm going to use a really small texture size, so File, New, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make a 64 by 64 pixel texture. I'm going to change my resolution to 300, so 300 resolution is standard. We should use this for most of our textures, and then I can click Create. Okay, I can then zoom in a little bit to see my really small texture, so you can see it's a really small file. And the first thing I am going to do is create a square. I don't want any Microsoft updates. So I've created this square here, and you can see the properties pop up. Now I'm going to have 4 squares, as you saw in my other texture here. Okay, so essentially this is going to be 32 by 32, this is going to be 32 by 32, this is going to be 32 by 32, this will be 32 by 32, and these are different colors that I'm going to use on my model. So you could make maybe a bigger texture file like 128 by 128, and we could have more colors in here if you need more colors on your model. But these are the colors that I want for my model, and these are the colors I am going to use. It's kind of better if you limit yourself to sort of 4 anyway. So okay, it's 64 by 64, therefore half of this is going to be 32 by 32, and then I can also just reset the X pixels here so that it fits right over there. So I've now got my first sort of little square here. Now I'm not going to worry about the color of these at the moment. I'm just going to copy these and move them into place. So it's going to kind of tile around here. So I'm just dragging them down and allowing them to tile here. Okay, super. So now I've got this sort of black square. We need to make this a lot more interesting. So I'm going to make a new layer here, which is above this rectangle. I'm going to hold Alt and click here. This is going to make a clipping mask. And then I'm going to go to my gradient tool. Okay, so I'm going to click on this gradient tool over here. You might need to click and hold on to it. It's the paint bucket tool, so you might need to find it underneath there. And the gradient tool is going to choose between 2 colors. So this preset up here, or you could even do custom down here as well. Can I add a new one in? Okay, I'm not going to look at this at the moment. But I can play with my blend of my gradient there. Okay, so it's going to choose between the 2 colors. So my sword blade is going to be grey. Now I'm going to use a sort of bluey grey here rather than a straight grey. So I'm going to choose a dark color first of all, move up to my other one, and then I am going to choose a lighter grey there. Okay, nice. And now my gradient tool, I'm going to click and hold Shift, and it is going to go across there. So this is this square. I want it to go from dark to light, so I'm going to need to do it the other way around, which is downwards. So now I can click and hold, and the range that this is creating is the kind of the blend that's happening, the bigger kind of blend. So you can see if I have it at the top, let's just, I sort of generally put mine in sort of the middle of that square there. Cool. So now I'm going to rinse and repeat for the rest of this texture. So create that new layer, hold Alt, click there, and I'm going to have a gem. Let's make it a red gem this time. So I'm going to choose a darker kind of red. I'm not going complete black with this. And same again, red, a sort of lighter. Let's go for pure red on that one. Okay, nice. Cool. Okay, so now I've got that happening in that square now. Let's move down. So this is going to be my gem here. make a new layer, hold Alt, click Alt, hold Alt and click here. Let's go for yellow now. So I'm actually going to have an orange as my base color, a sort of darker orange. Yeah, something like this. And then my light color, let's go for a nice bright yellow. Okay, and hold Shift and click other way. Super. There we go. So the clipping mask that I'm doing when I'm holding Alt and clipping there is keeping it constrained to those little black squares, which just makes it really, really simple. Hold Alt, click here. So I'm now going to constrain to this last one. So we might want maybe some sort of wood type color on here. So let's find a nice sort of brown and then a light brown, more orange. Let's flip those around. Hold Shift, click up. Okay, other way. Nice. So I've now got my sort of gradient map texture created here. So I just need to save this now. Save as, let's select a PNG and gradient texture sword and save that. Okay. Super. So now we can hop over to Maya and we can click on our hypershade up here to bring this up. So our materials, and I'm just going to apply this texture straight away to my sword. So I've got a blend here that I've created. Let's click on the color, click here, click file, and click on the little folder, find our desktop, which is here, and gradient texture sword. There's my texture there. Click OK. And now I just need to apply this. So I'm going to select my model, hold right click on here and assign the material to the selection, and then I'm just going to press 6 on my keyboard to make sure that textures are showing. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to do our UV unwrapping, or our UV kind of moving around sort of thing. So if you've already UV unwrapped, great. If not, it doesn't matter too much, because what we can do is this. So I can grab these faces here. Let's just look for these ones as well, the extra ones. Okay, so what I can actually do now is I can create and I can planar map this. Okay, and now I don't need to worry about unfolding or anything like that. All I'm going to do is scale it and move it into my gradient over here, and then I can then play around with the scale. So I can see that this is the bottom of my sword, so I want the bottom of my sword to be darker and I want the top of my sword to be a little bit lighter. Okay, so I'm literally just moving this in here. Okay, and now we can see I've got this really nice beautiful texture that's across my whole model there. So I can do this for everything else as well. So this was my gem here. So I've stacked 2 shells on top of each other. So I'm just going to grab them both by dragging around. I'm now going to rotate them so that it's pointing upwards, and then I can scale this upwards and move this in here. So now we're blending from dark to light, and you can move it around depending on how much dark or how much light that you want on this particular part. Okay, we would then rinse and repeat this across the whole thing till we've got all of our shells lined up. Notice it doesn't matter if you overlap stuff. So if I wanted, this is the handle here. Let's say I wanted the handle grey as well. I could put the handle there that you can see. I can overlap it with the blade. It doesn't matter. I'm just using the color values from this. Sometimes you might want to really sort of stretch them out, or even go into the actual UVs themselves. So you could grab UVs and move them kind of wherever you want. So I could start to blend some darkness into kind of the outside of this part here. So you could do some really complex stuff with your UVs. Let's look at that on this UV shell actually. UV shell. If I move this one over here, rotate it around. Okay, I'm going to put it on the light, so the whole top of it is kind of light, but let's try and add some shading around the edge here. I am going to grab every single UV, that's on the edge. Not, yep, okay. Okay, I have got some extra ones, but now if I move these into the dark area, you can see I've now got this sort of shade happening here on the top where it's darker around the edges of these. So you can create some really awesome looking textures just from using simple stuff and kind of simple sort of UV manipulation on there. In this video, we've looked into kind of gradient mapping using Photoshop. We've looked at clipping masks in here as well. This is a really cool way to create sort of stylized textures for your model, and it actually makes your UV mapping a little bit easier as well. So you'll get really nice effects. When you bring this into something like Unity as well, you'll end up with some really cool looking effects when you bring the lighting in there as well. And it's really, really good for low poly models. If you texture everything in this style, it's much better than just putting kind of flat colors on everything. You'll end up with this sort of really nice sort of appearance to this here, where you've got this really cool sort of blend on everything. Okay, all right, thank you very much, guys.